All right. All right. Hello, everybody. It's the Meista, your favorite heavy metal drinking buddy. Cheers, everybody. I am very, very excited tonight. Thrilled, really. I am chatting with Mike Alvord of, classic heavy metal thrash band, Holy Terror. And then now, killer band, MINDWARS. Love what you're doing. So thank you so much for joining me, Mike. This is a thrill. I'm very excited to be chatting with you.
Thanks, Victor. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So what's been going on with you? What have you been up to lately?
So, the whole, I work, I have a full-time job. I don't have the luxury of making money playing music. I wish I did, but very few people get to have that opportunity. And,
Right.
I'm very thankful that there are some people, but I work a normal job, normal 9-to-5 job. I work in the water utility, actually, and in operations. So my life really didn't change much from COVID because it's considered an essential job, right? People need clean drinking water brought to their house.
Right.
And since I'm in operations, you can't fix leaks from home. You can't, install meters from home and things like that. So from that aspect, my life hadn't really changed much. Obviously, like most, no concerts, no shows to go to. I isolated myself somewhat, but not a ton. I tried to just, stay as positive as possible and protect myself the best I could, the best I can. And then playing a little bit, I started dabbling in some different types of music, because obviously we weren't rehearsing acoustic guitar quite a bit over the last year.
Oh, cool.
So, a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Nice. And of course, so this past year, you released this amazing album,
Thank you. Yes.
I adore, which is fantastic. Excellent work on that. So, I mean, just a killer album, and it's really cool. And all of the, there's been four albums now from MINDWARS over the last 6-7 years. And just a really cool vibe. It has that. What I love about MINDWARS is that your sound it embraces that 80s, late 80s, early 90s thrash sound, but without being nostalgic. It's not, it's modern music. It's well produced, but it has that aggression and that, for lack of a better term, that chutzpah of that 80s, that late 80s sound. It's great, and it feels like if Holy Terror had continued, that's what it could have been. At least in my estimation.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. The most recent one that, like you said, came out last year. It's about, it'll be a year, a couple more weeks. I think it was the 25th of September last year. We are really proud of that one. I mean, that one we feel we hit the mark more than the first three. Nothing to take away from the first three, but if we get into it, I can kind of explain sort of the genesis and how it occurred. But the first MINDWARS album, it would have been, some of those songs would have been Holy Terror songs. I had at least 3 of those songs and parts of others written from back before Holy Terror broke up.
Oh, wow.
So I would have definitely brought that to the band and introduced it, and some, if not all, would have probably made its way into the band. Unfortunately, we kind of came and went in a flash of lightning. But our most recent release, The Fourth Turning from MINDWARS, we really sort of set out to do something a little bit different than the first 3, doing a little more harmony guitar work. We added a new bass player, and Danny Z, our old bass player, moved to guitar. So that enabled, a few things for us to do musically that we can't do with just one guitar player.
Nice.
So we tried to liven things up a bit, and I appreciate the kind words about it, because we really thought it came out quite well.
Oh, it's excellent. I've been listening to it nonstop. It's a great album. It's really good.
There was one thing that we screwed up on that I wish we would have changed, and the intro for The Awakening is like a minute long.
Right.
that should have been a separate track so people could just skip right over it. When it came out, we're like, holy shit, what did we do? But
I think it's good. I think it works. I think it works.
It does. It works, but if you really want to just get into the music, so.
Yeah, it's I mean, anybody listening to this, I mean, it's, if you love thrash metal, this is a really excellent album. I strongly suggest that you pick it up. It's fantastic. I really enjoy it, and as well as the previous albums as well. And that's one thing that, and I know you've touched on this before in other interviews, but that was the thing that I find pretty fascinating is, so Holy Terror broke up in what, 91, 92?
89 is when I left.
Oh, you left in 89. Okay.
I left in 89, and they carried on probably for about another year, so maybe 90-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you pretty much stopped playing music, at least publicly, until you formed MINDWARS in 2014. 2013, I guess it was
2013. Yeah, it was at the very end, December of 2013, but we really started, doing things in 2014. When I quit, and if you want to get into the details of what happened with Holy Terror, I'm more than happy to do that. But when I quit, I was a bit sour on the whole music business. I did play a little bit. There's actually a live video of a band I was in called Black Apple Forest.
Oh, wow.
Sort of, it's that grunge period. It was with a friend of mine who I knew from middle school, he was in a bunch of punk bands. He was in a band, his most popular band was a band called Nature Core. And he invited me to some acoustic poem and jam, and I did. And so we ended up kind of doing some stuff, and we did it. We played this place called, I think it was the Natural Fudge Cafe. The entire video is actually on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
So if you search Black Apple Forest Natural Fudge Cafe, you'll see it. It's nothing like thrash metal at all. But it was a bit different. And then I played a little bit with, there's a guy named Steve Hansgen. He used to be one of the bass players of Minor Threat.
Oh, okay.
And I played with him, this drummer, Scott Gottlieb, and then the singer actually from Black Apple Forest. Actually, the drummer, Scott, was in Black Apple Forest. We branched off and started doing some different stuff with Steve. And then this was probably 92-ish. And I was kind of soured still from Holy Terror. I wanted to do something with my life. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I was working with my uncle as a mechanic, which, I probably could have made a good living at, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. So I decided to go back to school.
Nice. And that's where you got a biology degree, correct?
Yeah.
And then I think you got I've read a little bit about, or I think I heard an interview with you several years ago, or read an interview with you I can't remember where, but yeah, I'd read that you got a biology degree, and then I think, was it environmental
health for
okay. And that's how you got into water.
That's how I got into water and water quality, and taking
Nice.
samples and things like that. Yeah.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
So what was the
I kind of just, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, I kind of just isolated myself from everything for years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you kind of disappeared there for a while. I mean, at least in terms of music and publicly. Right. What was the catalyst for you to form MINDWARS? What prompted that?
So, I had material when Holy Terror broke up, when I left. I had quite a bit of material. And I never stopped really playing. There probably was a period of about maybe 10 years where I didn't touch the guitar at all. But, if I went camping, I'd play some, camping songs on the acoustic and things like that. But it wasn't really that much. And then when buying some equipment, I still had my guitars from back in the day. And so I started just tinkering around with creating my own music. And then, as we talked before the interview started about social media, Facebook is really what brought me and our drummer, Robbie Vittori, back together. He and I had met when Holy Terror played Milan, Italy in 1989.
Oh, wow.
We were on a tour with Exodus and Nuclear Assault, and we played, gosh, I can't remember the name of the venue, but he was working for a magazine and he actually interviewed us.
Oh, okay.
And my family, my mom's side of the family is from Southern Italy, Calabrese, and that's where he's from.
Oh,
And so
cool.
we sort of had this connection, and he actually was in a band called Head Crasher. And he had sent me a letter and a tape of his band and all of that sort of stuff. And I still had it. When I found it and showed it to him,
Wow.
he was blown away.
Nice.
And we connected through Facebook the end of 2013. And he and I sort of have different recollections of how it went down. I think he asked me, he thinks I asked him, what you're doing with music. And so I sent him some of my MP3s that I had of just guitar work. And he laid down some drums to him. And one thing led to another. We said, hey, let's do something.
Nice.
So it was really sort of just a spur of the moment. And thank goodness for Facebook, love it or hate it, it benefited that. It created MINDWARS.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I mean, as much as I hate Facebook sometimes, that's totally worth it. Right there. That's great. That's really cool. And then you also have another member who's Italian as well. Did he come in to play because of that connection, or
Yeah, definitely. So, I live in Los Angeles. At the time, Robbie was living in Torino in Italy. And he asked me if I, knew any musicians. And I said, not really. No one that would be interested in, doing thrash. He goes, well, I got a buddy who plays guitar, but he said he'd play bass for us for MINDWARS. So I'm like, okay, sounds good. If you're going to have a rhythm section, you should probably have that rhythm section together. And so they were able to rehearse. We weren't able to rehearse together, but I was able to play at home with my guitar, and he was able to play with Danny Z, bass and drums. And so it kind of worked out really nice. Nice. And then, when it came to the time, and this is again when, he and I kind of have differing memories of what happened. When it came time for vocals, having a band with members on two different continents is really challenging. It's hard enough. Robbie lives now in Newport Beach. So it's about an hour and a half drive. It's hard enough for he and I to get together and rehearse. But, when you're on another continent, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And, I still had sort of this apprehension of working with a bunch of other musicians. I didn't want to recreate Holy Terror because recreating Keith Dean would be an impossibility. To me, I think he probably has the greatest voice in thrash metal ever. And so, Robbie says, well, can you sing? I said, no, but I could probably yell and make it work. And so that's kind of what happened is I just decided to do it because just, if I knew somebody, or if somebody lived close to me that had sort of the same mindset, maybe we would have picked up a vocalist, an actual vocalist, because that is the weakest part of the band. I think the newest album, I probably did my best, but it is the definitely the weakest link for sure.
Well, and it's like you said with Keith, he had such a cool, interesting range and could do a lot of different things. In that short window of time on those two albums, there's a lot of different stuff happening in terms of what he was doing back then, which was really cool and interesting. And I think was one of the things that helped make Holy Terror stand apart from a lot of other bands. And as you said, it's too bad it was such a short-lived, kind of flash in the pan in a lot of ways, because it was a really interesting band and really, exciting and doing different things and exploring different avenues that other thrash bands weren't doing so much in a lot of ways. I mean, there was a lot going on at that time, especially now, hindsight,
right.
You can kind of hear things, but I think sometimes it was by chance. But it seemed like Holy Terror had, at least as a fan, from my perspective, it seemed like you guys had a really different take on music than a lot of other bands. And and I don't think it was just by chance. It felt like it was, you guys had a purpose, you had an idea of what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, Kurt is the brainchild of Holy Terror. No doubt about it. He wrote majority of the music. It was his conception, But I think one of the things that made us different is, you know, Keith was 10 years older than me. So when Holy Terror formed, I think I was 18 or I was 19, I think, and Keith was 29.
Wow.
And that's a big difference, 19-year-old and a 29-year-old.
Yeah.
And Kurt was probably right in the middle. I think he was, you know, 4 or 5 years older than me. So he might have been, you know, early mid-20s or something. And then Floyd, I think, was about as old as Keith, and same with Joe. And so I think what that did, you know, and most of the other bands were probably all Kurt's age, you know, or a little bit younger, like early mid-20s, the Metallicas, the Testaments, the Exodus, Death Angel, you know, Dark Angel, all those guys. They were just a couple years older than me and probably right around Kurt. And so I think Keith brought in a different perspective. He was not a thrash guy at all. I mean, I don't even know if he knew who Metallica was when we first brought him into the band.
Wow.
I mean, he was his favorite vocalist was Roger Daltrey from The Who. He loved Bon Scott, and he was a huge Mel Blanc fan, the voices of Warner Brothers cartoons.
Oh, wow.
And so I think that's why he was able to create all these different sounds. I mean, he was doing the guttural growls when that wasn't even a thing back in late 80s. So I think that was something that just set Holy Terror apart. And, you know, I was younger, so I kind of brought more of that. I was friends with a lot of guys that were into punk. And so I sort of brought that punk attitude with it, and it just kind of worked. And it was, you know, instead of having a bunch of guys all the same age with the same, you know, taste in music, we had a variety of flavors. Joe Mitchell, I think he was a big Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Oh yeah, wow. Oh
yeah.
wow, interesting.
That was his, you know, he was a big Frank Zappa fan, and so, you know, and he was not into thrash at all. You know, he wasn't a big thrash guy. You know, I think Kurt introduced Joe to thrash when he auditioned for the band. So I think that's kind of.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
That's interesting because there are some, kind of more progressive elements to some of the. It's, you know, I mean, you know, initially it's a thrash band, but there are some very progressive elements to what you guys were doing back then. That's really interesting. So I mean, you mentioned kind of the punk influence. What else were you listening to? What did you grow up on? Or well, it's right. Maybe even go back further. Like, how did you get started as a musician? When did you start playing guitar?
That's a good question. So my dad used to work for Capitol Records.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't in the music side. He was a computer guy. But he actually I have an older sister. She's 10 years older than me. He got my sister, my cousins, and my aunt, I guess it was, 4 or 5 tickets to see the Beatles at Dodger Stadium. And I think it was 1969. Wow. Yeah. So my dad, when I was in 2nd grade, so what is that, 8 years old, 7 years old, he brought home, I have no idea why, he brought home Alice Cooper $1 Billion Babies for me to check out. Wow. In 2nd grade.
That's amazing.
And, yeah. And so that's sort of what corrupted me from the beginning.
Nice.
And then as most kids that age, I was a huge Kiss fan. And my dad was friends with the controller of Casablanca. So I would get all the Kiss records for free. He would bring home all these Kiss albums.
Oh, wow.
And so I was also really into baseball. But when I was 12 years old, my sister, boyfriend at the time, who now is her husband, she married her high school sweetheart. They, you know, like I said, they were 10 years older than me. So they were in their early 20s. They took me to see Kiss in 1977 at the Forum. It was the Alive 2 tour. Wow. And after that show, I came home and I told my mom, I said, I don't want to play baseball anymore. I want to get a guitar and take guitar lessons. Nice. So that started me on the path of wanting to be a rock star, right?
Very cool. Very cool. I think there are a lot of musicians in that age. You know, it's funny because it's funny too. It's a lot of thrash musicians I've talked to where, it was like they all say like it was Kiss. Yep. Ace Frehley. Like,
oh my gosh,
you know, that's what
larger than life.
Yeah. I remember. God, I must have been, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. I remember going to a mall, and there was a kiosk selling T-shirts, and it would have been, I think it was Love Gun era. and begging my mom to buy me a shirt, and she refused. Like, no, I'm not. You're like 6 years old. I'm not buying you a Kiss t-shirt. I'd still hold it against her. Just kidding. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. That's nice.
Yeah, you know, Kiss. We chatted about this a little bit, you know, before the interview, how we grew up in a time where there was no social media or anything. So, you know, you'd see these magazines with these guys with makeup on and platform shoes and larger than life, and it was just, it captivated me. And like you said, I think it happened to a lot of us that in that time.
Yeah, well, they were like superheroes, and
They were.
And what was, you know, again, I try not to do the old man, like, oh, back in my day and the social media, but there was this mystery about bands. Like, we didn't know anything about anybody. It was, you know, it was like, you know, Ozzy Osbourne was the Prince of Darkness. We didn't know he was this kind of bumbling, crazy person. It was just, you had very little understanding of who anybody was, you know, apart from interviews and, you know, photos from shows. You know, there wasn't. Now it's, you know, let's follow them around with a camera all day long. Like, I don't want to see that.
You know, that's a great point, because it allowed us to have an imagination.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, you know, and I do it all the time. If you have a question, oh, I'll just go to my phone and ask the question, and you find it immediately, or I'll go to my computer and ask a question. But back then, you know, I didn't know how old Kiss was, for one. You don't really hear that. You knew they were from New York, but, you know, you didn't know where, or too much of their history. You just didn't have the overload of information, and so your mind would be able to work, I think, a little bit better, maybe, or at least your imagination was able to work.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, for me, I remember, you know, I don't know how old I was, but, you know, like, what was it? Maybe I was in junior high or late elementary school, you know, when they took the makeup off. I'm like, oh God, put it back on.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to know who you are. This is terrible.
And they look nothing like what I expected them to look like.
No. Yeah, that was rough. That was a rough time. But then at least we had thrash metal that came out that kind of saved things for a bit. Speaking of thrash, nice little segue, I guess. So how did you originally get involved with the guys from Holy Terror, especially considering that most of them were older than you? What was, you know, kind of, how did you get involved with them, and what started how did the band start? How did that all come to be?
So Jack Schwartz was the original drummer for Holy Terror, just like he was the original drummer for Dark Angel.
Oh, okay.
And he was my neighbor. He lived like 6 houses down. Oh, wow. And so we would jam, you know, we would play cover songs, Ted Nugent, Kiss, Rush, whatever. I started getting more into the new wave of British heavy metal when I started getting into my, I guess, mid-teens or so.
Nice.
And Jack came to me one day, and I think I was maybe 16, somewhere around there, maybe 17. And he says, hey, I joined this band called Dark Angel. We're going to be rehearsing at my house. And it was Don Doty, the original singer. It was Jimmy Durkin, original guitar player. It was probably Mike Gonzalez on bass, but I don't remember at the time. And I jammed with them for like 2 weeks. I was contemplating joining them.
Wow.
I must have been 16, maybe. 16, 17, something like that. The reason why is they left. They said, okay, hey, we're going to, because they're all from Downey, which is south of downtown Los Angeles, probably about an hour from where we grew up in the suburbs of San Fernando Valley. And so Jack said, hey, we're going to be rehearsing in Downey. Do you want to join the band? I said, no, I'm not really interested. I don't have a vehicle to go down there, you know, whatever. And so they kind of went their own way. And so I was in a band then called Black Widow. And we were actually on Metal Massacre 3.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. And the song is horrible. It's an instrumental. We didn't have a vocalist. I think the quote on one of the reviews I heard was, Brian Slagle must have been scraping the bottom of the barrel for this one or something.
Oh, no.
It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. So I knew Brian. So I thanked him for bringing me on that. He was working at a place called Oz Records, which was in Woodland Hills in the San Fernando Valley. And so I was kind of doing my thing with other bands, and Black Widow, I was trying to bring them more towards the heavy, fast stuff because, I was getting into bands like Motorhead, Iron Maiden, Angel Witch, and the drummer and the bass player were brothers, and they wanted to go more towards the Def Leppard side.
Oh, okay.
So Jack got kicked out of Dark Angel, and they replaced him with the mighty Gene Hoglan, which I think that was probably their best decision they ever did.
Oh, yeah.
Gene is just a monster. Nothing against Jack, but Gene is just a monster on the drums.
Oh, he is amazing.
Yeah, he might be one of the best thrash drummers, right next to Dave Lombardo.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so Kurt had recently came down to Los Angeles from Seattle and left Agent Steel. And so the two of them hooked up. I don't know how they met, but Jack and Kurt hooked up, and Kurt knew Floyd. So the three of them started jamming. So Kurt originally wanted Juan Garcia to join Holy Terror and leave Agent Steel. And it was probably a good decision that Juan didn't, because look what Juan ended up doing. He just got a Grammy, a few months ago, right? With Body Count. So Jack was 2 years older than me. So I think Kurt's 5 years and then Jack is 2 years. So Jack said, hey, you want to jam with these guys? We're forming a thrash band. And I said, sure, yeah, why not? So I joined, or I went and rehearsed. Kurt was living with Jack at the time. And, my playing was decent, but it definitely wasn't the caliber of Kurt's at the time. But they liked me. They thought I had the energy and the drive and the influences that they felt was appropriate for Holy Terror. And so the four of us started rehearsing regularly, and and that's kind of how Holy Terror formed.
Wow. And then, so Keith, when did he join at the same time or around?
No, so this was August of '85.
Oh, okay.
And I had just graduated high school, just started college, which I didn't want to do because I wanted to play music. And so the four of us jammed for probably a good 2-3 months, and we started setting an ad in this local paper called The Recycler. It would, if Craigslist was a paper newspaper, it would be that. That was The Recycler, and it came out every Thursday. That's where I bought all my gear from just people put ads in, and people put ads in for bands, for wanted musicians. And so we tried out a number of people. We tried out a few of my friends that weren't any good, that I knew from high school. We tried out a number of people. And then one day we relocated our rehearsal. So we actually got an official rehearsal studio. It was a warehouse in North Hollywood. And this guy shows up, pouring down rain. He shows up on his 10-speed bicycle with a trench coat, walks in and says he's here to try out for the band. And I don't remember what we played, but he wasn't anything spectacular from my opinion. And I think the other guys didn't think that, except Kurt. Kurt, for some reason, knew that Keith was the guy.
Huh.
And Kurt had to convince Keith to join. So that, the night ended, he left, he rode his bike all the way back. I mean, it was probably 10 miles that he rode in the rain.
Jeez.
And yeah, Keith was an interesting guy. I really miss him. And Kurt had to convince him to join, and told him kind of his concept. I don't know exactly what he told him, but he convinced him to join. And as we talked earlier, that Keith did an amazing thing with Holy Terror. I think he is the sound of Holy Terror. I mean, obviously the music speaks for itself, but without that vocal, as soon as you hear it, you know what band that is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I agree. So what was and I want to talk about this as well with MINDWARS, but kind of what was the writing process for Holy Terror? Was it a collaborative effort, or was it more, Kurt? Well, you said Kurt kind of wrote a lot of the stuff, but in terms of did you all kind of contribute, riffs or, beats, or, and did Keith write all the lyrics?
So for Terror and Submission, Kurt had everything.
Oh, okay. So it was kind of already done. It was
already done. I brought 2 songs in. I brought a song called Lake of Fire, which I wish I remember how to play it, because it was a good song. And I don't know why it didn't end up on Mind Wars, because for some reason it didn't make the cut for Terror and Submission. But I brought that song, Lake of Fire, and I brought Tomorrow's End in. I wrote the music and the lyrics for Tomorrow's End, and they liked it. So that made Terror and Submission. So everything on Terror and Submission was Kurt, vocals, lyrics and music, except for Tomorrow's End, which was mine, lyrics and music. And there really wasn't much input from anybody else. Oh. We kind of just showed the songs. Kurt knew all the harmonies that he wanted me to play alongside of him. And that was kind of it. But, then we started touring and we started really becoming a band. We started learning each other. Jack didn't play on Terror and Submission. Jack was kicked out of the band after the demo. Oh, okay. So Joe Mitchell came in. When we started working on Mind Wars, I brought in a bunch of riffs. Kurt had several songs, one of which was a former Agent Steel song, right? Dead of Pain was Back to Rain or something like that for Agent Steel. Oh, okay. But we just played it on 78 when they played, like the slow version. Right. And Keith wrote half the lyrics. So okay. I brought two of my songs ended up on the album, Do Unto Others and Judas Reward. And Keith wrote the lyrics for both of those. And Keith wrote the lyrics for No Resurrection, which Kurt wrote the music, and Immoral Wasteland, which Kurt wrote the music. But even though I primarily wrote all of Judas Reward and Do Unto Others, and Kurt primarily wrote all the other songs, it was definitely more of a collaborative effort. I remember working with Joe Mitchell on the tribal drum stuff in Do Unto Others and some of the ending of Judas Reward. I think I wrote a transition in No Resurrection. So it was still very heavily Kurt's band, but we were starting to come into our own. We had toured, we must have played over 100 shows together, both in Europe and the United States. And you really grow connected during that time. And so we were really starting to come together more as a band. Now, when we were writing our ideas, we were still sort of doing those separate for the second album. But it would have been really nice if we could have had a third album, because I think it would have just been so different than, just like Mind Wars is totally different than Terror and Submission. Yeah. I think whatever that third record would have been a lot different.
So, not to get into too much dirt, but what happened? Like, why was there not a third album? What changed with the
really one word, and that was drugs.
Oh, okay.
So when we went out on our second leg of our US tour with DRI and Creator, Kurt was pretty much a heroin addict at that time, and speed addict. I don't know so much heroin, but definitely speed. And we bought a bus. He wanted to buy a Greyhound bus and convert it into a tour bus in the matter of a month. So it wasn't put together. So we were all sitting on the floor of it as we were driving up to Northern California to start the second leg of the tour. And the bus broke down. So our manager was following us, Scott Peterson. He also managed DRI. He was following us in a a Buick or whatever, 6-seater Buick. And we pulled over. Kurt and his girlfriend Vicky and one of the roadies, Kevin. No, oh my gosh, he's gonna kill me if he hears this and I forgot his name. It'll come back to me. I don't know why I'm forgetting it. I'm having a total brain fade. They stayed back to work on the bus, and our manager took me, Keith, Floyd, and Joe to play a show in Mountain View, which is just outside of San Francisco. Oh, okay. And so the four of us played that show without Kurt.
Oh, wow.
We then had another show the next night. We played it without Kurt. We then returned back to LA. We had a couple of days before we had to fly into Tucson. Kurt was still working on the van, tweaking out on meth or speed or whatever it was. And it came time to fly out. So the four of us flew out without Kurt. and we went to Tucson and we played a show in Tucson without Kurt. It might have been even with Atrophy, I think. I can't remember.
Oh, cool.
And we ended up playing that entire month leg of the US tour without Kurt.
Wow.
And so that really sort of drew some a big wedge between me and Kurt, some animosity. I think on both of us. I resented it because I have some actual recordings, and I was playing some of Kurt's lead work because I had to learn it, because otherwise it sounded empty. I mean, Holy Terror was a two guitar band for sure.
Yeah.
Just like Judas Priest and Exodus and even Slayer. I mean, it's two guitar bands. I mean, Slayer doesn't do a bunch of harmony stuff, but Testament, all of that, they're two guitar bands. And so I held some animosity, and I think Kurt resented me a little bit because I was playing, we were touring without him.
Right.
So even though he and I patched things up, we had 4 shows. We were done with that. The 3 members, Joe, Floyd, and Keith, actually drove the U-Haul truck all the way back from New York. I flew home. I called my folks and said, hey, fly me home. So I think those guys resented me a little bit for abandoning them, but I was done. I was sleeping in the back of a U-Haul truck with all the equipment as we traveled from one city to the other.
Jeez.
I mean, it was a rough time. So we were definitely starting to fracture. And then we had 4 shows with Motorhead at the end of '88, and that really brought us back together. It was us, Death Angel, and Motorhead, and
wow.
That was an amazing experience. It was amazing meeting Lemmy. It was amazing playing with Motorhead. The Death Angel guys were absolutely incredibly nice and friendly. So then we headed off in February of '89 on a tour with Exodus and Nuclear Assault. And that's when the final straw happened. So it's a long story, and I don't want to get too much into the details, but we had signed with, our original contract was with Music for Nations in Europe, and that was it. We didn't have any US distribution. So we had signed with their competitor, Roadrunner, in the US. Well, when we were on tour, and we signed away not only the rights of the first 2 albums in the US, we signed European and American or US rights for our next 3.
Oh, shit.
So when they found out about it, Music Nations found out about it when we were on tour, shit hit the fan. They kicked us off the tour.
Wow.
So Kurt, being the guy that he is, he punched the road manager in the face and said, no, we're not leaving this tour. And then the guy got a bat, and I think the police were called, and it was chaos. It was complete chaos. So we ended up at a pizza joint, and I was done with it. It was kind of brought back memories of touring without Kurt, and it's just, I was done. And I told them, I said, guys, I'm heading home. They wanted to still try to get on the rest of the tour. And I said, I'm just going home. And Kurt said, if you leave, you're done. And I said, okay, I'm done. And so the sound guy and one of our roadies actually came with me.
Oh, wow.
And Kurt and the other roadie and the rest of the band stayed in Europe for another 2 to 3 weeks trying to get back on the tour, and they never were able to.
Wow.
And so that was kind of the demise of the band. Yeah.
So I can definitely understand your bitterness from, at that point, and not how that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah. Kurt and I have since, I guess, buried the hatchet, so to speak. We're friendly with each other. I actually went and saw him. Gosh, it must have been 4 years ago or so now. He was playing bass with a band called Zeke, punk band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I went and saw him at the Whiskey, and
nice.
We took pictures together, and shook hands and hugged, and yeah. So it was good. It was a nice, because I hadn't talked to him in probably 25 years or so.
Wow. Are you in contact with the other guys as well still, or?
Not really. Joe Mitchell played with Bob. It's like some kind of punk country band. Bob Wayne and the Somethings. But I think he left that band, and I think he's back in North Carolina. He has no presence on social media. So I haven't heard from him since that day I left the joint in Germany. Floyd and I are friends on Facebook. I haven't spoken with him, but we've exchanged comments and stuff. I chat with Kurt periodically. In fact, I asked Kurt if he minded if I used MINDWARS as the title of my new band. And I didn't feel I owed it to him, but I felt I owed him the respect at least. And he's like, "Yeah, go for it. Whatever you want." So
cool. Yeah, and you've I mean, Do Unto Others, obviously that album, and album title, and and you've done Holy Terror, as well. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's kind of full circle. And then obviously, Keith sadly died in 2012, prior to MINDWARS coming into existence. Died of cancer, which was a terrible day. Yeah, very, very much missed. So raise a glass to
Keith.
Yeah, what a great vocalist. And sadly, I think very underrated. Well, the whole band, I think Holy Terror was a very underrated band in a lot of ways. But there were a lot of, I mean, the music industry is such a weird beast, and there were so many great bands, at least for me, as a kid, in the late 80s. There were so many cool thrash metal bands that I never really understood why they didn't get big. And I know it's, now as an adult, it's like, well, there's a lot going, it's money, it's power, it's luck. But it was just, frustrating because there were such great bands. It's like, okay, why, Metallica's great, but like, why is Metallica huge? Why is not, Holy Terror big too? Like, I don't get it, but just kind of luck of the draw, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think some of the underratedness that Holy Terror gets is a simple fact that we just weren't around that long, and we only did 2 records. Well,
and you were very, I mean, it's thrash metal, but it was, like I said before, it was very progressive. It wasn't. It's music you have to sit down and listen to. You can't. It's not background music. There's a lot going on. It's very interesting. It's very intricate. So it's for thinking people. And I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm going to piss people off. But yeah, I think there's some stuff where, there's some bands that, you can play that in the background because, it's a good party music. But yeah, Holy Terror was not party music. It was fast. It was aggressive. It was killer. It was, just great stuff. But you had to listen to it. It was really interesting.
And Kurt wrote some amazing lyrics.
Yeah.
He was an amazing lyricist, and Keith was too. Both those guys, yeah.
Well, and I think just the delivery of all of it was, and that's what I love about MINDWARS too. Is it's in that same vibe. It's really, it has that same intensity. There's a lot going on. It's thoughtful, especially lyrically. It's really interesting. Politically charged, socially charged. You've obviously got some strong feelings about things. I love it. It's really cool. It's really fun to listen to. It's really interesting. And same thing where it's like, I mean, I made the mistake because I'm working from home, and I made the mistake. Well, not a mistake, but I put on MINDWARS, and I'm trying to do work, and I wasn't. I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I couldn't work. I was listening to the music. I was kind of staring off into space, just listening, and like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be working. So, but yeah, I'm transfixed by your riffs and the lyrics. There's a lot going on. It's really, really cool stuff. I really enjoyed a lot.
Thank you very much.
Is it similar? I mean, as far as kind of the writing, is it mostly you? Is it kind of your thing, or is it a collaborative thing, or?
No, it's mostly me. What the first record, the first 3 were pretty much all me. But that's not to say I don't have input from others. And I'm not writing the bass lines, but I'm writing definitely all the guitar stuff. But the last one, and before I get into that, let me just tell you a little story about Holy Terror too that you may not know. When we recorded our demo, Kurt recorded over my solos.
Oh wow!
So we recorded Black Plague, Guardians of the Netherworld, and Distant Calling. And I had played half the leads, and Kurt played the other half of the leads. And when it was all said and done, he recorded over all of them. And I almost quit then, after the demo was written, because I was young and I was, my ego. But when I sat down and talked to him, I was not that good at that time. I mean, I was good, but I was a much better rhythm guitar player. And he said, look, when we record the album, you'll definitely play some solos for sure, but you need to focus on the rhythm guitar. We need that. We need a solid, I mean, just like Jeff Hanneman. I mean, Jeff Hanneman was an amazing rhythm guitar player.
Yeah.
And so I took that to heart. And so, you know, it worked out. And I kind of carried that into MINDWARS. And so that's why I really try to write. I always have riffs coming into my head. And so, you know, kind of going back to your question, for the fourth turning, I would just set my phone down, press record, and just start riffing. And then I'd send it to Robbie, and he would tell me which ones he liked and which ones he didn't. And for the most part, I agreed with him. There's a couple that we debated back and forth, and I can't remember if they made it or didn't make it into a song. And so once we had all these riffs to say, okay, these are the riffs we're going to use for the fourth turning. Let's start structuring a song. And so now he was living in Newport Beach. And so we jammed together. So even though all the riffs are mine and the songs primarily are mine, all the lyrics are definitely mine. The fourth turning was more of a collaborative effort with me and Robbie. Because he had more input. He said, no, that riff should go with this song, or that riff should go. So he was more of an arranger as opposed to a composer. Okay. But it was definitely, it was more of a collaborative effort. I really want to, for, you know, when we do a fifth record, I really want to have more of a band effort, but it's just difficult, especially Danny. I don't know if you know this, but Danny, who's now playing second guitar, still is in Italy. He had COVID and he was in the hospital. He's still recovering. He's still not well. Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. And so it's difficult when you're in different locations to write. Yeah. But Rick, the new bass player, me, and Robbie all live in the greater Los Angeles area. And we're actually getting ready to play a show in November. So, I mean, we'll start, I think we're going to start writing material together. But you know, just because Holy Terror was together, we all lived within 5 miles of each other. We all drove down to the location together. We played 4 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, we rehearsed from like 7 till whenever we were done, midnight or whatever. Wow. And when you do that as a band, you really become a band. It's less a, you know, individual sort of process.
Well, it's exciting that, you know, you mentioned you've got a show coming in November. I was going to ask you about that because you've been hinting on social media that MINDWARS might be doing a live show. So I don't know if you can say anything at this point, like where that is.
Yeah. So we've been trying to get on gigs. I've been speaking with Spike Cassidy of DRI to see if we can play some shows with them. It seems like a lot of the shows that are happening now are ones that were canceled from 2020.
Yeah.
And so they were kind of already set. They just rescheduled them. We are in communication with Evil Dead. So we're hoping to play a show with Evil Dead. We would have loved to have been able to play with them. They just played the Whiskey with Hyrax, your shirt.
Oh, yeah.
And Heretic, I think it was, and a couple other bands. But Robbie was in Italy. But we're trying to work out a gig where we're playing together, and that would be amazing.
That'd be great.
But we have just a show in San Fernando Valley, a place called Universal Bar and Grill. We just booked it. It's November 19th, which is a Friday, thank goodness. It'll be our first show since, gosh, I think we played the NAMM, Schecter Guitar NAMM after party in January 2019. I think was the last time we played together. So
wow.
it's been a lot. Yeah. So it'll be nice. It's a small place. I think it holds, 50, 100 people. Cool. But it'll be nice to actually just get out and play in front of people again.
Yeah, that's great. Are you playing with anybody else, or is this?
I am. I just don't know who they are yet. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's a thrash show. There's not a lot of thrash bands.
True.
And we would love to be able to tour with some, but you got to be in the group. If Nuclear Assault, Nuclear Blast, right? That label. If they're sending out one of their bands, they're only going to send out other Nuclear Assault, Nuclear Blast bands with them.
Right.
If you're on Century Media, they're only going to send Century Media bands with them. So it's really difficult to get on piggyback on tours. There's a couple festivals we're trying to get on. Unfortunately, a lot of festivals ask, well, you're going to play Holy Terror songs. And we will. We played Tomorrow's End. I mean, I wrote that song, but we can't play. We're not Holy Terror.
Yeah.
And I can't sing Keith Dean, and to me, it's a disrespect. We have incorporated some musical aspects of some of the songs, like an intro or an outro, but we can't play Holy Terror songs. So it's just tough. It's really frustrating, and it's sort of not depressing, but it's just disenfrancing. You feel you want to get out there and play music, but it doesn't seem like anybody wants us to play.
Well, that's what I do.
Thank you.
That's frustrating. Yeah, that was the other question I was going to ask. Are there any touring plans? So, and you mentioned that it sounds like you're maybe on the cusp of starting to write some new material. So, I mean, obviously, the last album isn't that old, but
right,
almost a year. But it sounds like you might have some things in the works or some ideas, at least, for another album.
Pick up The Fourth Turning and look at it. Did you notice the little subliminal? Do you have it in front of you, the CD?
Yeah.
Do you notice the little subliminal wording right in the middle? Did you notice that? What it says?
Oh yeah, the end. Yes.
Yes. So I did that for two reasons. One, to the end of the world, right? The awakening and the fourth turning and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
But I also was contemplating just packing up the band and we're done.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think that's going to happen. I think we are going to still go on. Robbie definitely wants to, and I do too. I just, at what point do you just say, if nobody's going to come out and see you, or you can't get on any kind of big show, what are we going to do? I guess we can just still put out music. So over the last few weeks, I've started hearing riffs in my head. And so I've been laying down those riffs again on my phone. I haven't sent anything to Robbie yet, but the creative juices are starting to flow. So I think we'll probably do another record. Cool. I just don't know what it's going to sound like or where my brain's going to take me. But I think we probably will. Nice.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you.
You guys do some really incredible stuff. Like I said, this album is fantastic. As is, Do Unto Others, also very cool album. A lot of just cool riffs and just great hooks, and I mean, it feels, again, it's not nostalgic, but it feels like old school thrash metal, but with a kind of this new energy to it, which I really dig. I really like it a lot.
And that's what we tried for. I'm an old guy, so that's kind of what I know. And we wanted to kind of pay respect to Holy Terror. We wanted to have the influences of what we learned in the 80s, but yet sort of energize it into, modern sound. And, we think we hit the mark. It sounds like there's a few people out there that think so, for sure. So thank you very much.
I think it's great. It's amazing. Yeah, I've been telling everybody, like, you need to check this band out. If you haven't heard MINDWARS, you need to check out MINDWARS. It's, especially if you love thrash music, then that's a go-to for me. Well, I don't want to keep you all night. So I always end my interviews with one question. And that, as you may know, my blog, Brews and Tunes. So I pair craft beer with heavy metal music and hard rock. So Mike, you're hanging out on a Saturday night, chilling out at home. What beer do you crack open, and what album are you spinning?
Well, I love it. So let me show you my shirt. I don't know if you know who Russian River.
Oh,
is.
I love Pliny the Elder.
Pliny the Elder. So. That is one of my favorite beers. Yes. It's an IPA. You only can get it at a few locations. There's a couple spots here. They only deliver it once a week. And I haven't had Pliny the Younger yet.
Yeah, me
They
neither.
they only brew it and serve it at their brewery in Northern California, Russian River.
Yeah.
My cousin actually waited in line for, I don't know, 8 hours all day. I don't know, just to get in and have it. It was, and they only brew it one time a year, I guess. So it probably is Pliny the Elder. You know, Modern Times is probably my favorite brewer.
Great.
I love IPAs, but I like the hazies too. I mean, I like a good porter. You know, there's a bunch, but probably Pliny the Elder if I have it. If not, it'll probably be a hazy Modern Times. And then, you know, I love so many different bands. My all-time favorite band is Led Zeppelin, but I think if I was going to put something on, it probably would be Motorhead's No Sleep Till Hammersmith.
Hell yeah. Great album. What a great album.
Yeah, I just, you know, Motorhead is what really kind of brought me into the thrash world, even though they're not. And what did Lemmy say? We are Motorhead and we play rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
But he just had that, you know, FU attitude and didn't really care, played whatever he wanted to play, was fast, but it was heavy. You know, Filthy was an amazing drummer, and Fast Eddie. It's remarkable that all three of those guys are gone.
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah.
But there is so much music out there, but I probably would put on a Motorhead record for sure.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's I adore Motorhead. I think they're, I mean, you know, obviously they became very, very big, but I always thought they were very like in the old days. I thought, you know, when I was a kid, I thought they were under. I remember seeing them on, I don't know, some late night show and just being blown away by the intensity. I'd never seen anything like that before.
Right?
Like,
I know.
you know, and this guy singing in his microphone, you know, looking up above, like, what is this? Like, I was just a kid and I'm like, this is amazing. This is the coolest thing I think I've ever seen. Like, yeah, it struck me. It just, there's certain things, certain bands, you know, like Kiss, you know, certain things where you're just, it's the sound and the visual where you're just kind of transfixed, like, whoa, I've never seen anything or heard anything like this before. And it's just kind of changes everything for you. It's, you know,
I mean,
they were cliche, but
they were rock and roll, they were metal, and they were punk.
Yeah.
You know, so they were all of it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I always loved about Motorhead. There's so many, you know, I know a lot of metalheads, I know a lot of punk. They all love Motorhead. Everybody loves
Motorhead.
Yeah. If you listen to hard music, you like Motorhead. If you're a punk rocker, if you're a metalhead, you know, just into, you know, hard rock, you like Motorhead. You know, at least some of it, you're going to, you know it at least. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Well, cool. Well, Mike, this was really a pleasure chatting with you tonight. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And, you know, best of luck to you and MINDWARS. What a great band. You know, when I post this, please, everybody, you know, check out the description and you know, look at the description. There are links to MINDWARS. Check out their Facebook page, check out their page, check out their albums, especially this beauty right here. You will not be sad. I just knocked my computer all over the place. You will not be sorry. It's such a great album, especially if you love thrash metal. You have to own this album. It's fantastic. So cheers. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Right on.
This was great. Thank you.